Now, I will tell you that you just mentioned something important. This idea that Jesus is borrowed from, because I was at a comedy club in Hollywood over the weekend. My son brought us out there for a Christmas gift. And so we're sitting in the comedy club. And the comedian it feels like he's probably sympathetic or raised in a Christian environment, although he doesn't call himself a Christian today. And he was talking about a conversation that was occurring between his grandmother, who's 91, and his sister. And his sister said something that he thought was so utterly hilarious, that Jesus never even lived. And he said, and there was no laughter in the audience. It fell flat. Because he said, come on, that's not what we're even talking about here. The question isn't whether he lives, is he God? Okay, he was trying to joke. But for a lot of people in that audience, I think they've been convinced by, 15 years now, Zeitgeist, the movie, and all kinds of other people who are out there, Richard Carriers of the world, that maybe there wasn't really a Jesus. Right. So the question is, maybe they're buying into this idea, even though the Bart Ehrman, who's one of the more well-known biblical skeptics right now, he's written a book about this, making at least a defense for the existence of Jesus, right? Well, why would you need to do that? Because a lot of movement has occurred in critical thinking and skeptical thinking about whether or not Jesus is even a historical figure at all. Now, right. I can tell you so now, does Jesus resemble prior mythologies? Okay, I'm writing a new book, and I've actually gone through now. I looked at every major biblical or a non-biblical deity mentioned in anything from the beginning of humans, okay, all the way through the Roman Empire. There's a ton. That took about 4 months to go through them, and I read every mythology deeply, looking for similarities. I wanted to know every single possible, and I wrote them all out. I discovered there's 15 similarities between all the mythologies and the story of Jesus. Not that everyone shares all 15. They don't. But there are 15, and all of those similarities are the things that you would expect your God to do. So if you say, hey, our God, he appeared in a miraculous way. Okay. Everyone's God appears in a miraculous way.
Right.
Is it a virgin birth? No. But it's a miraculous way. You're going to call that a similarity? Really? We stole that? I don't expect God to show up somehow that's different than just Joe next door showing up, right? Oh, am I our God so we can work miracles? Okay, so it turns out those 15 you identify are all the things that any rational person, if thinking about God, would think God can probably do this. And those show up in all of them, not all of them, but most of them. It just happens that Jesus comes and personifies everyone's expectations of God. This is what Paul's saying on Acts 17, right? I see you're a very religious people. You got lots of idols here, lots of monuments to your gods. Even got a thing here to the unknown God. Well, I'm here to tell you what the real God looks like. Because you've been expecting something, and you've been right in some areas and wrong in others. I'm going to show you where you're right and where you're wrong. Well, that's, I think, what happens in history. But regardless of that, the question is the account we have on the Christian side early enough? Does it resemble some? I will tell you, if you think, oh, he's got, just like Mithras. Mithras has got all these things in common with Jesus. No, he doesn't. No, he doesn't. Read what's known about Mithras. There is no existing scripture from Mithras, okay, Mithraism, but you can read all that stuff. Most people exaggerate like crazy to find any similarities at all.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with that. I get it.
It really is amazing, the credulity of someone who wants to find similarities between the gospel and one of these, pagan cultic religions. They'll bend everything to try to make it fit, and yet that's usually matched by an absolute incredulity in looking at the scriptures, at the perceived, inconsistencies and alleged contradictions and things. Well, that's, the slightest little, word choice difference is, well, that's an inconsistency. But then on the other side, when trying to disprove, and that really does go back to, I think, the condition of the heart, and
absolutely,
you see what you want to see.
Yes, that's where your presuppositions are overriding everything else in the game. And so that's why it's important for us to be able to talk about presuppositions. That's why it's so important for us to do both. That's why I think that's conditional before you begin this other thing. Yeah. Because you can do all this other thing. If you haven't discovered what people are in their presuppositions, you're not going to get anywhere with that.